When I was 10 years old, my stepdad and I were out visiting his cousin who lived in a rural area in southern Oregon. We had stayed out late and the sun had gone down about 2 hours before we called it a night and started to head home, about 40 minutes away. We were driving through a lightly wooded area with several ranches spread along the route, but for the most part, the road was empty and pitch black outside of our headlights. As we cruised along the winding back road, a car suddenly came up behind us at excessive speed. Without missing a beat, the guy swerved around us and flew on down the road, soon out of sight around the next turn in the road. "Jerk," my dad muttered. I'd been half asleep, but I agreed with my dad and leaned my head back against the window. We drove on for about another half mile when we saw the guy again. My dad pulled us to a stop as we came onto the scene. The man had taken a turn too sharply and ran through a mailbox, through a fence, and into a tree. The car was smashed, the front end crushed in from the impact, glass everywhere, and steam from the radiator poured onto the cold night air. The guy stood next to his car staring at it. My dad told me to stay there and got out. I could see him walk over to the guy and say something. The guy pointed at his car, then spoke to my dad. After a minute, they walked back to our car, and my dad got into the driver's seat. The guy got into the back as I was in the front seat. I glanced back at the man's car, and all the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I sat stiffly in my seat as my dad started our car and began driving. "We're gonna give this guy a ride home," my dad explained. "Okay," I replied. The guy spoke.
"Hey, I really appreciate this. I guess I judged that turn wrong. My wife is gonna be pissed. Just glad I made it okay."
"Yeah," my dad replied. The man made small talk with my dad and tried to talk to me a couple times, asking where we lived, where I went to school, if I liked my teachers, that kind of thing. I only answered him with one-word answers, refusing to look over my shoulder or in the rear-view mirror at him. After a few miles, he said,
"This is it,"
and we pulled over. He got out and walked around to my dad's side of the car.
"Hey, thanks, I really appreciate this."
He held his hand out, and my dad shook it, and then we started back home. After about 10 minutes, I turned to my dad. "Dad, that guy." "I know." "But Dad, I saw into his car. He was still in there." He looked at me with a very serious look that I'd never seen before or since. "I know." We've never spoken about it since then, and I've never told anyone else.
Number 2.
So, me and my mother and sister traveled a few states over to where my grandma lives. This is the first time we visited her in many years, probably about 4 or 5. When we did, we stayed at a hotel due to her house being under renovations. The last time I actually stayed at her house was when I was little. Probably 1st or 2nd grade. I don't remember much. Anyways, my uncle basically lives with her and also takes care of her. There's 4 bedrooms in the house, if you count the basement, which is furnished with a bathroom, so it's practically a room. My grandma has her room, my mom took the basement, and my uncle gave my sister his room, so that left the guest room to me. This is basically the only room in the house that doesn't have a TV, radio, computer, or anything like that. In fact, it's so old-fashioned looking that it's creepy. So the first day, everything is great. I had a bit of a hard time falling asleep, but that can be expected from being away from home. The second night, last night, is when it happened. I fell asleep fine at around 10 or 11, and then I woke up and remember the clock telling me it's 3:21 a.m. This isn't very unusual because I tend to wake up a lot in the middle of the night. I didn't think much of it, and then I shut my eyes, attempting to go back to sleep. Then I heard the door creak. I thought maybe it was my little sister, because she frequently does climb into bed with me. But when I opened my eyes, the door wasn't even opened, even though I know I heard it. I shut my eyes again. I heard the creaking again. I opened my eyes, and that's when I almost pissed myself. I don't know how to fully describe it, but I saw a girl. She wasn't fully there. Like she was translucent. God, that sounds so cheesy when I say it. But that's the only way I can explain it. Her skin was white and kind of shiny. It reminded me of the color of the moon almost. Her hair was dark, but for a moment, I actually did think it was my sister because she also has dark hair, but I quickly realized it wasn't. The first thing I did was snap and turn on the lamp as quickly as I could. Poof. She's gone. Stupidly turned the lamp back off, and she's there again, in the same exact position, as if nothing happened. From the position in my bed, I could only see her head and torso. She kind of just stared at me, floating further into the room. I cowered with the covers pulled up to my chest. I wanted to hide, but at the same time I was fascinated, kind of in awe. She kept floating until the rest of her body was revealed, and I guess she was wearing a white dress, but it was the same exact color of her skin, so I don't really know. It covered her feet. I really don't know what I thought. Maybe that she was going to try and speak to me, or eat me. I've never been into this kind of stuff, so I have no idea. There's this closet in the room, kind of a storage closet. My grandma has like 5 deflated pool floaties in there from when she used to have an above ground pool. The female ghost kept floating, right on past me to the opened closet. The closet light was also off, so she kind of disappeared into the darkness. Then I heard this crinkling noise, like she was playing with the floaties or something. I sat there frozen for about 5 minutes, and she didn't come back. I ran out of the room and got into bed with my sister. I didn't fall asleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I told my mom, and surprisingly enough, she believed me, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was going to ask my uncle since he's lived here way longer than any of us have, but he was helping his friend out with something and wouldn't be back until the next day. So I tried to forget about it for the rest of the day, but it was always there, in the back of my head. Later, my sister and mom went out to get dinner and I stayed home with my grandma. Tried telling her about it, but she has hearing problems and kept asking me to repeat myself, so I eventually gave up. And then I opened a drawer, looking for a pen, and I found this picture. This picture is the creepiest picture I've ever seen in my life. I don't even know, it's so odd. It's this girl. And I guess it could be the same girl I saw, but I'm not really sure, other than the fact that she has dark hair. It's in sepia color, and her eyes are closed and her head is tilted up. Then there are these weird fucking faces above, like clown faces, but they looked more like masks or something. I have no fucking clue. I'm completely spooked. I asked my grandma about it, and she had no idea where it came from, which didn't surprise me because she's a bit senile. Also, on the back of the photo, it says the word look. Like when you look at pictures your parents have and they wrote the date or whatever on the back. It's written really casually like that. To this day, I still have no idea what to make of the situation.
Number 3.
If there's one piece of advice I can give anyone, it's don't take the cheap way out. No matter how good it seems, something about that decision will bite you in the ass one day. You might be lucky, and it may only be a mosquito bite. But if you're not, it could be like a great white shark bite. For me, I wasn't so lucky, obviously, or I wouldn't be saying this. A couple of months ago, I got in a very bad accident. So bad my car got totaled almost beyond recognition. My insurance company gave a decent amount of money to me for it, but money was tight for me, and I needed a car fast. I went to the place everyone looking for a deal goes. Craigslist. For a day, I kept looking for a deal I couldn't say no to. I needed a decent running car for cheap, but it also had to be reliable. All the sellers at the time were asking for fair prices, too fair for me to get them. I was about to give up for the night when I came across the deal I was looking for. This guy, Robert, was selling a 2001 Toyota Camry with 100,000 miles on it, while claiming to run smoothly, for a damn good price. I contacted Robert, and he told me I could test drive it the next day. I took a taxi out there and gave the car a good old town drive. Let me tell you, it ran like it was brand new. No complaints at all. It seemed almost too good to be true. So when I got back, I asked what the deal with the car was. No matter how hard I pushed, he said nothing was wrong with it. He seemed pretty genuine about it the entire time, so I believed him and bought it on the spot. I had the car for about a month without incident. Then, one night, I was driving home from a long day of work. It was about 1 in the morning, so as you can imagine, the roads were almost desolate. I was smoking a cigarette with my windows down, just listening to the wind fly into the car. I remember being stopped at a red light when a chill ran down my spine. This made me very uneasy, but I blew it off as my exhaustion. The light turned green. I began to accelerate. Then, someone, or something, whispered ever so quietly, a phrase in my ear. The sound of the engine mixed with the wind made it almost inaudible. No cars were around, so I slammed on my brakes, bringing my car to a complete stop. I waited a couple of seconds for maybe another whisper, or anything really. Nothing. No incident occurred for the rest of the ride. The next 2 weeks went by without anything like this happening again. I completely forgot about it. That is, until something happened again. It was pouring rain while I was at work, and it was very slow, so my boss let me smoke a cigarette in my car. When I got in my car, I got the same chill once again. Instantly, I remembered my last experience. I sat there in complete silence, waiting for something to happen. About 30 seconds later, my car got filled with the smell of freshly shot fireworks. It got so bad, so quick, it made me start coughing like crazy, gagging. I got out of my car and ran back inside. The look on my face must have been far from normal because my boss came up to me to make sure everything was alright. I told him about the smell, and he said the only thing he could think of was some kids might have fucked with my car. We went out to check it out, and this time, the smell was gone. He said he would check the security cameras later on, but he never saw anything. I tried to blow it off again, but this time I couldn't find a reasonable explanation. After an hour straight of thinking about what happened, I tried to give Robert a call. Unfortunately, this guy had the nerve to cancel his phone. About a week later, I had just gotten to an apartment to deliver a pizza. It was going pretty routine. The guy was cool, gave me a nice tip. I even had a good conversation with him. As I was about to wrap things up and head out, I noticed something caught his attention in the parking lot. "Hey, you drove that Camry here, right?" he asked. Yeah, why do you ask?" I replied. "I think there's someone in your car." I looked at my car and sure enough, I saw a girl sitting in shotgun. She had black hair, was very pale, so pale it looked almost like she was glowing, and wearing a white dress. Shit, she broke into my car. Call the cops. For a few seconds, I thought, I knew I wasn't crazy, and I finally got the person fucking with me. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. When I was on the 3rd floor, the girl was looking forward while I was facing her side. I lost sight of her going down the stairs to the second floor, but saw her as soon as I got down them, and let me tell you, I nearly fainted. She was staring directly at me with a smile from ear to ear, but that wasn't the worst part. Her eyes. Well, they were something else. They were normal-looking blue eyes, except the iris was white instead of black. But something else about them that I still can't point out. It was mesmerizing. I stood there for an unknown amount of time, staring deep into her eyes. The next thing I know, I feel a tap on my shoulder, breaking my trance. It was the guy I delivered the pizza to, informing me the police were on their way. He asked why I was standing there, so I explained. But when we looked at the car, she was gone. The police ended up coming. We filled the report. They did a quick search through my car to see if there were any signs of a break-in. Unfortunately, there was none. Everything was in place exactly as I left it. The police said they would check the cameras and inform me if they saw anything. They still haven't talked to me. Over the next couple weeks, I would hear the damn whispering again, but only when my car or something in my environment made a loud noise. At first, it was occasional, but by the second week it was there at almost every loud sound. I could also make out two separate voices, one of a man and one of a woman. I still couldn't understand what they were saying. That is, until I was on my way home tonight. A few minutes from my house, I got the chill again. I knew it was coming. This time, I heard it ever so clear. It's your turn now. I felt her ice-cold breath run down my neck. In my peripheral, I could see her reflection in my rearview mirror, waiting for me to turn and look at her. She kept whispering those damn words in my ear, almost creating a layer of ice on my neck. The longer she whispered, the more I felt like I was being pulled into her influence. Finally, I got home, and I fucking ran inside. I've locked myself in my room, but I'm starting to think that was a mistake. If I were to look at my window, I could see my car. And the whispering. I'm starting to hear it again. It's three separate voices now. Two girls and one guy. They keep telling me to look at the car. Just one more time. Really quick, just for a second. Maybe. No. Yes. Maybe I should look. Just real quick. Not even for a second. I mean, what harm could it do? Besides, I've seen one. What about the others? They need love too. Just one quick look.